The views and opinions expressed by the hosts do not state or reflect those of the company and its management. Furthermore, the assumptions, views, opinions, and insinuations made by the hosts or the guests do not reflect those of the show, the management, and the company.
Identify, discussed, understand. Casting live from Manila, Philippines, we are Simply Security, helping you streamline security easily.
Hello, good evening, Philippines.
Good evening, listeners.
And welcome back to another episode of Simply Security, recorded today live, 16th of December 2020. This is Mylce Melia.
And this is Erick Alindogan.
Welcome to Simply Security,
helping you streamline security easily.
Hello, Erick.
Hi, good evening, Mylce.
It's another episode, and would you believe this is our 12th episode?
Yes, perfect timing nga. It's our year-ender, and then at the same time, it will be our season finale for our first season under Simply Security. So I'm really excited because, it's perfect timing because the topic for today or for tonight will be very, very relevant as we will be going through the 2020 rundown, right?
I think tonight we are going to undergo a process wherein, we have to look back at all the things, especially in the aspect of business and security, corporate security. We have to have that kind of process to know or to think and sort of analyze all the things that happened for this year so that we can better face the year coming or the 2021.
This particular episode is very interesting because we will be having the chance to make a look back of the significant things that happened and may have put in significant impact when it comes to business and security in the Philippines.
But before that, we have to have a recap of all our topics, our past 11 episodes. So we had security as a career. That is our very first episode. And then we had data privacy
and protection. That's with Mr. Abel Quintos of Globe.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have convergence of HR and security with Ms. Odette De Rafera.
And as a former journalist, we also had a chance to talk to several journalists in this podcast. Of course, there's Sir Matthew, who studied terrorism in Southeast Asia and disaster communication, especially with regional correspondent Harris Jade Julio. We also had a chance to talk with humanitarian work among high-risk areas, with Ms. Heidi Anicete.
I also remember talking about cybersecurity with Mara Milano. So we talk about cybersecurity and women in security.
Yes. And of course, understanding tropical cyclones.
Yeah, with Mr. Typhoon. And then we've also happened to have two episodes when talking about mall security. That's with Mr. Almos and Edward Martinez.
All right. I think we've covered everything. And this is our 12th episode, as I stated earlier. And we are going to have a rundown of the major business and security highlights that defined 2020 for the Philippines. Please join us as we go through each one of them in tonight's episode. So let's introduce our guest. Erick, are you excited?
Okay. Yes, very. So tonight we are joined by a seasoned and highly respected corporate security practitioner in the country. He was the former director for compliance and security for PMFTC, an affiliate of the Philip Morris International, where he had strategically guided the company's compliance and integrity program in Philippines, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau markets. He's a certified NFPA 3000 PS active shooter and hostile environment response Azure program specialist. He has also have extensive experience in conducting threat, risk, and intelligence assessments.
For over 6 years, he was the Marshal of the Family Court of Australia, who had the statutory responsibility for the personal security of the judges and security officers of the court. He provided strategic leadership of the court's security program for the 10 registries and 11 sub-registries Australia-wide. He had trained at the U.S. Marshal Service Academy at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, USA on court security management. Likewise, he had also spent time with the Threat Assessment Section of the Judicial Protection Division, U.S. Marshals Service in Washington, D.C., USA. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our honor to introduce to you Mr. Hermie Colina.
Good evening, Sir Hermie.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Mylce. Good evening, and many thanks for having me here tonight.
Yes, we are very happy to be that you agreed to be part of our 12th episode.
So
it's so quick, actually, you know.
All right, so for tonight, Black Pearl's 24/7 Command and Data Center have prepared a rundown of the top 10 major events and issues that we gauge have defined the business and security landscape for 2020 in the Philippines.
This will be exciting, as all of us here will be sharing our inputs and insights regarding each of the issues and events that will be presented. It is 10, so please bear with us.
We will try our best to make it very engaging, brief, compact, and concise. But then again, this will be more of our insights and our own personal opinions with regard to the issues that will be presented.
So let's start with number 10. The January 2020 Taal volcano eruption. So as we can remember, it erupted and released steam, ash, and rock fragments. Volcanic lightning was also monitored. PHIVOLCS raised the incident to its highest alert level 4. This placed Batangas under state of calamity and also affected nearby areas of Laguna and Metro Manila. And like in our pre-program, I said it was the first event in 2020 where we've seen people wearing N95 masks. It's not because of the coronavirus, but because of the sulfur, the ash from the Taal volcano. So, Sir Hermie, as to the business and security part, what can you say about January 2020 Taal volcano eruption?
Yeah, the Taal volcano eruption in January of this year was I think an eruption that happened after 1997. That was the last eruption that occurred was in 1997. And whilst Taal had been restive over the years, I would say that people were somehow caught unaware of what's going on. Because there were quite a number of people actually in Tagaytay at the time. So when it erupted, people were actually scrambling for safety. And the traffic was terrible. And there was no electricity. You know, asphalts were everywhere. Asphalts were actually, you know, it blanketed some areas. It went as far as Ilocos region. And there were also some minor earthquakes, which is characteristic of volcanic eruption. And it also caught a number of businesses in the area. As far as PHIVOLCS is concerned, they've declared a 14-kilometer danger zone. Now, if you look at the map, the 14 kilometers is actually the aerial distance. So some businesses were actually not really confused, but they're asking themselves, yes, we are in the 14-kilometer danger zone, but then again, we're not really directly in front of the volcano because that's where the danger is. When you have this surge, when there's an eruption, you have this the storm surge, and it will decimate everything on its way. But then again, you know, if you are in the radius, you'll be impacted depending on the wind direction. You'll be impacted by asphalts, obviously, and it would certainly affect your business operation. And it has impacted quite a number of businesses in the sense that not only were we have the asphalts, the quality of air has actually gone down as well.
Yeah, true.
It worsened. And for those people who have respiratory problems, it will exacerbate the situation. I think from memory, there's point something microns of particulate matters. They call it PM. I liaised with some of my friends in the security industry, and they were monitoring the daily quality of air index in Metro Manila. just so that they can advise their personnel, their people, that to be, to wear masks, especially if you have respiratory problems. So I guess the Taal volcano eruption at the beginning of this year is kind of a precursor to what's going to happen after that.
That's what I felt as well. It felt like a warm-up. Yeah, true.
That's right. And companies have already, have already started to initiate some of their plans, and without thinking, realizing and projecting that something worse is going to happen.
Any worse. Okay, so that is our yes.
On my end, naman, same observation with Sir Hermie. Probably what I would just like to add, coming from the consultancy side, corporate security consultancy side, we've discovered a number of our clientels, trying to activate their business continuity plan, then realizing that apparently they don't happen to have the necessary response when it comes to volcanic activities, because the mindset for some of these companies is that there's really no active or immediate active volcano within Metro Manila. What they're looking at is that Taal volcano is relatively far from Metro Manila, and
it will not affect Metro Manila.
It will not have like significant effect. And then lo and behold, when the Taal volcano erupted, significant amount of ash fall affected Metro Manila, and it became like a problem for many companies here, especially in the call center industry and outsource industry, because many of their employees were hesitant, to report to the office because of the worsening air condition, and there are reports that some of their employees are having respiratory problems or whatnot. And then I vividly remember that one of our clientele's employee was like asserting, the DOLE memo. There's a particular DOLE memo wherein the company could not force an employee to report to work if he feels, or if he or she feels that her welfare will be endangered, and they've used the Tagaytay volcano eruption as one particular basis on this one. And just to wrap this particular issue up, it's interesting because the Tagaytay volcano eruption was really like a warm up for everyone.
And I remember, in Luzon particularly, we're not wearing face masks yet, except for the people who are directly affected by the Taal volcano eruption. However, the face masks in the neighboring provinces went to the affected areas. So by the time that the pandemic happened, and
there's a shortage.
There was a shortage exactly of face masks, particularly the N95 mask.
Yeah, just before we move on, I just wanted to cite an alternative business continuity, because Eric was mentioning about companies who are trying to initiate or activate their business continuity plan, and realizing that they didn't have anything for volcanic eruption. But the alternative in business continuity planning, they call it adaptive business continuity, is that you plan for the effects, not the cause. So which means that when you prepare your business continuity plan, you don't actually look at the cause of certain situations, like the volcanic eruption, but the effect of the volcanic eruption, or effect of a particular significant disruption. For example, there are three areas that you need to look at: unavailability of personnel, unavailability of location, and unavailability of resources. So if you prepare for these three, regardless of whatever is going to happen,
the scenario,
you'll be prepared. There's going to be something that you can put in place to make sure that your business will continue to operate.
Okay. I hope our audience caught Sir Hermie's tip.
Let me just capture one comment from Moira Galiaga. Following on the point of Eric about complacency, as there is no nearby active volcano, it must be noted that large eruptions like Pinatubo and from those in neighboring Indonesia have also the same potential to affect areas in the Philippines. Thank you very much, Moira, for that comment. Now, looking at on our number 9, pre-pandemic business closures in was experienced in the cases of Nokia, Wells Fargo, and Honda during the pre-pandemic time. I think this was during early first quarter of
First
2020.
quarter,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
Okay.
Yeah. I think the main driver for this particular closure is global competitiveness,
yeah,
brought about by inadequate physical and digital infrastructure in the
right.
country, and I guess the ease of doing business,
Business, yes.
notwithstanding the fact that the president already directed all agencies to make sure that that businesses making applications in a particular agency should not be allowed to wait for quite some time,
Mm-hmm.
be able to get
Mm-hmm.
something after a meet or something. And also, there's still that perception or otherwise of corruption in the bureaucracy.
Mm.
So I think those are the things that actually impacted on global competitiveness of companies in the Philippines. And some of them have relocated, like Honda actually relocated to Thailand, I think.
Right.
And the others, although Wells Fargo is still here, they still have operation in the country, although it's more of business process outsourcing.
Outsource, right.
Nokia, they
It's a
have been
different
bought
story.
they have been bought by Microsoft before, so I'm not quite sure about why they relocated out of the country. There were certainly a number of companies that actually moved out of the country. FedEx is one. We used to have the regional hub of FedEx used to be in Clark, I think, and in Subic. And they moved out of the country, and I'm not sure where they went. I think they went to Vietnam or China. I'm not sure.
Yes.
So these are the sort of things that I think the government's really looked at, and I think the government is actually moving in that in a positive direction in having programs to be able to address the inadequacy in the physical infrastructure of the country. For example, the Build program. That's one program that actually would address that particular weakness in our global competitiveness.
Agree.
The digital infrastructure, on the other hand,
Which we're
the
still
government has
working
already
on.
cracked the whip on the telcos, and also we have the third telco now who's going to come on the line, maybe mid next year, and they would have a real competition amongst the three telcos. Hopefully, that's what the people are actually hoping. And the government had actually asked the telcos, because if I remember it correctly, the president had asked or had directed the two telcos to make sure that their connection, that their speed is going to improve, and they're going to report back to the government by the 8th of December. And they did. From my personal experience, for example, although my download link or my download speed is quite fast already, because I'm subscribed to 100 Mbps.
Wow.
The upload speed was actually increased. It used to be a third of what I had subscribed. Now it's almost the same as my download speed.
Yeah.
So my telco has actually complied with the president's directive of increasing the speed of connection.
I also want to follow through what Sir Hermie was saying, because we were also following this particular issue when it comes to the telcos. And I think when the president instructed the major telcos with regard to this one, aside from the efforts that were made by the telcos, I think one of the issues that were also raised was more on the bureaucracy on the ground level, on the grassroots level. Because apparently there were several projects that most of these telco companies were doing, building more towers, more infrastructures. However, the problem is that there are just too many bureaucracies on the grassroots level. That's why when there's that kind of problem. That's why we've also talked with DILG to ensure that the LGUs will fast track all the necessary permits and processes for them to be able to do.
The number of days that it will take for an application for a cell tower to be constructed in a particular area, or application for business, I think is more than 3 months, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or 6 months even.
Yeah.
So the SILG actually has directed the local government units to
streamline
speed
it.
up, speed up the processing of this application, so that we can have as many, I guess, cell towers as we can have, because we have a huge user base in the country.
That's true.
And the number of cell towers that we have cannot cope up with the number of users, and that's why you have drop calls. If you like I'm really frustrated myself, because I'm living in Metro Manila, in Parañaque, and yet inside my house I could not make a phone call. I could not make any phone call inside my house. I have to go out of my house to make a phone call.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Which
then
is bizarre.
Within Metro Manila, there should be a mandatory requirement by the NTC that Metro Manila, the minimum should be 3G.
Right.
There shouldn't be GPRS. There shouldn't be Edge. It should be 3G. That should be the minimum. In Singapore, they have this system there that every month the NTC will conduct an assessment, signal assessment. And if you fall behind what is mandated by the government, you pay a fine. That should be done here. They should crack the whip on these telcos and ask them or direct them to give what is due, to speed up, to increase the bandwidth, to increase the internet connection speed,
to fulfill their
in
promise.
Metro Manila.
Yeah.
That's
I
true.
also for this particular topic, I also wanted to raise other factors, particularly two things. I remember this particular issue. They've raised about the CITIRA, the Corporate Income Tax and Incentive Rationalization Act, which basically rationalizing and making stricter incentives received by foreign investors. I think that the rationale or the wisdom of this particular law, I hope I'm correct with this, was to push local businesses and to give them more allocations or more opportunities to boost their businesses in vis-a-vis foreign investment. Then at the same time, you also have the train law. The train law, the tax reform for acceleration and inclusion, which I think impacted Honda during this time, because it put in higher taxes in purchases for automobiles. It just so happened we're not just enough safety nets for some of this particular industries.
Yeah, but I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure whether it's the CITIRA or they call the CREATE law that was passed, which lowered down the corporate tax, because we were I'm not sure we were the highest in Asia. So they passed this law to lower down the corporate income tax from 30, I think, or 32 to 25, I think.
Yeah.
Or 20%, whatever.
Yeah.
So that in itself is supposed to boost the company or create jobs and what have you. And at the same time improve or enhance the global competitiveness of companies in the country, because they can now compete with our ASEAN neighbors because they're not going to pay that much amount of tax. Yeah.
True.
Yes, that's true. As you mentioned, Sir Hermie, as to the global competitiveness, we should also take a look at how our neighboring countries in Southeast Asia is doing how in accommodating this kind of global companies. Because as you said earlier, there are companies going to Vietnam, to Thailand, and it seems like these mainland Southeast Asia are, doing well in encouraging or getting more foreign investors that creates jobs. In Vietnam, for example, they were able to withstand the effects of pandemic.
Right.
They were able to continue doing great in their economy. So for me, I mean, as an input to this conversation, I would like to point out that maybe it is about time to reap the benefits of the being a member of Association of Southeast Asian Nations.
Yeah.
Sharing of information, where are our losing ends in terms of governance, and also how are we going to be more proactive in listening to these companies before they leave, So there.
All right. Just to end this particular issue, let me read one comment from our audience. One major concern of a foreign investor thinking of locating in the Philippines is also the policy environment. It has to be consistent, and the rules should not change in the middle of the game. While security and infrastructure are factors, if a company assesses it can still effectively do business under those conditions, they will come. But if the policy environment keeps changing and is unpredictable, especially after an agreement is already reached, this will be a big turnoff for most of them.
Companies actually had suffered because of that.
I think that is word of honor. The bottom line is word of honor, right?
Yeah. For me lang, it's more of, sometimes we just have to stop experimenting things. I mean, experimenting is okay.
It's okay.
Because, it creates innovation, it creates best practices, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes we have to make sure that, we will stand up for the policies that we put in, or the infrastructure that we put in. All right.
So for our number 8, we have the increase in crimes related to the Philippine offshore gaming operators, what we call the POGO. Okay, so why is there a proliferation of POGO companies in the Philippines? I think that is a common question, for all of us. And will POGO sector continue to prosper by next year? Especially that there is a new tax system that will be imposed by the BIR for POGO by 2021. So, Sir Hermie?
Yeah, that's right. I think there was a law that was passed increasing the share of tax. I think 5% increase. Was that Eric?
Yes,
correct?
5%.
Turnover. The problem is, whilst we have a number of POGO operators in the country, some of them are not actually paying taxes. And the BIR are actually running after them. So if we can only, I guess, collect the amount of taxes that they don't pay to the government, then we could reap the benefits of having POGO operations here in the country. And I think the government is now cracking the whip on them, ensuring that if you are a POGO operator, and most of these POGO operators have Filipino partners,
right?
Of course,
you can the Philippinization Act.
Yeah, so the government is cracking the whip on them, telling them that if you want to continue business in the country, you need to pay your taxes. It's as simple as that. You can't have both. Meaning you want to do business and then you don't want to pay taxes. It doesn't work that way. So the government is trying to put a line on the sand and say, this is it. We've given you enough for chance to straighten up and pay your taxes. So next year, apart from the 5% increase, you have to pay your tax before we're going to reissue your license to operate in the country. The proliferation of POGOs in the country is an offshoot of the government opening up the market to China, the Chinese. So you'll see a lot of Chinese coming
walking
over to
around
the country,
Makati.
you know,
Using
as
Google
POGO,
Translate.
working for POGOs in the country. And it also created a separate segment, as we call it, segment of crime in the country. Because some of them actually are involved in some criminal activities, like, kidnappings,
Human trafficking,
their own nationals, and ringing the families in China, asking them for ransom.
Yeah, true.
So we have this explosion of POGOs in the country, whilst we benefit from the taxes that are
supposed
paid
to be. Yeah.
There's also a social impact in terms of crimes that are happening in the country as a result of having these groups.
And I'm not sure if this is actually studied, but there is also an effect as to the rise of rental properties.
Yeah, cost of living.
Cost of living.
Cost of living in the Philippines. In Makati, for instance, have gone
because of their presence.
Yeah, because of this, and then there's also a lot of local businesses who have shut down simply because most of the tenants or the leasing companies would actually prefer leasing it to Chinese companies. That's simply true. Because the payment terms are more amenable and very attractive. Like imagine they would ask to lease a property wherein they would give like 6 months in payment in advance. And then they would double up the market rate. So if I'm a tenant, even if and this is business at the end of the day, that's why they would usually hand it over to most of the Chinese companies.
Even condominiums.
Yeah, condominiums. Like
right.
In Makati, like a 25 square meter condominium, like this is a studio type, would cost you like around 4 million already. And this is like a prime target for many POGOs because it's close to their business operations or to their office. For me, in with regard to the proliferation, as far as I know, I think one of the reason why Philippines and also I think Cambodia is one of the prime areas for gaming outsource industry is because we are not that strict when it comes to online gaming, because as far as I know, and when you talk about China have already restricted online gaming within their area, but casino per se. But since this is online casino, it doesn't show, or it doesn't recognize any borders, so to speak. So
it's somehow a new industry. Industry as to we don't have enough laws. These are emerging laws, and somehow it crops up because of the social impact, like what Sir Hermie said a while ago, the social impact that this POGO.
If we don't act on these crime incidences and try to rein them down, then it could have a significant impact on the outlook of the country. You know how it is in the foreign media. If something happens, it's blown up, sometimes out of proportion, and the headline would say, "Don't go to the Philippines because it's this and that," but the incident actually happened in Mindanao.
Yeah. True.
So if you talk to these people abroad, you have to tell them, look,
where
specifically this place is actually in Mindanao, which is about 2 hours by plane from Manila. So if you are just going to stay in Manila, you are not going to experience this. But then again, even if you are here in Manila with all these crime incidences going on, then you would, if you are a tourist or if you are an investor wanting to invest in the Philippines, you have to think twice.
Yeah, true.
Although most companies who are going to invest in the country will have to do a due diligence anyway.
Yeah, true.
But that's one thing that they have to look at. Is the crime situation in the country manageable, such that we're not going to spend more money than we have to ensure that our operation will remain and our people will be protected and secured.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, before we go on a break, let's have one comment from Sir June de la Cruz. Hello, Sir June. Long time no see. Sir Hermie always amazed me of his general knowledge on business and security-related issues. In relation to this, I'd like to be enlightened on business outlook for 2020 related to guarding services, technology, and security processes, standards, maybe global and local.
Is that a question?
Any forecast?
Yes, any forecast, business outlook.
Security would certainly would certainly have I guess a major place next year. Meaning it will be in the forefront still with all the issues that we have. There will be I guess a number of changes that need to be made.
Right.
Because we've learned from this pandemic that companies can operate with employees at home.
Yes.
So, and that presents another landscape as far as security is concerned.
That's nice.
So there could be a shift in the paradigm as far as security is concerned on how we're going to approach this particular situation. Digital transformation is another. Most companies, and as I've discussed with Eric, some companies have actually, we call this as the pandemic-induced or fueled digital transformation. If not because of the pandemic, some of the companies will not be transformed digitally. But for other companies who had been transformed already, they reap the benefits of being transformed. So because they're there already.
Bring it
so
on.
Next year, when the company is going to take a stock of what happened this year and move forward and be digitally transformed, and so is security, because there are quite a number of issues that are going to come up in the digital world. And maybe there's going to be a speed up in the convergence of the physical world and the digital world. In that, because of digital transformation, if you are a security practitioner now, and once you are just focused on the physical aspect, you may have to reconsider and look yourself into the mirror and say, I have to retrain myself and be convergent. You need to be well aware of what's going on in the cyber world as well. Not necessarily become an expert, but at least you can talk about, you can discuss cybersecurity issues with cybersecurity practitioners as well.
Right.
So it's no longer a world of, I'm security, you just physical world, but you also have to consider the digital world as well, the logical space.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much, Sir Hermie. So before we reveal our top 1 to 7 in the list, let us just have a quick break first, and we'll be right back after some short reminders.
Casting live from Manila, Philippines, we are Simply Security, helping you streamline security easily.
And we're back. Welcome back to Simply Security. Tonight, we just have finished talking about top 8 to 10. Okay, major issues and events that define the business and security landscapes in the Philippines, together with Mr. Hermie Colina. In our number 7 spot, the devastation brought by series of strong typhoons in the last quarter of the country. Of course, I personally experienced this. Super Typhoon Rolly. We had Shawnee, Tonyo, and Ulysses. So here is our some of the details. First is the rarity of such phenomenon to happen. We discussed this with Mr. Typhoon, Sir David Michael Padua. Impact of these typhoons on business and general safety. And of course, disaster response in relation to the ongoing pandemic control. The perfect storm, as what Mr. Hermie Colina.
Yeah, I remember that
was
he
you,
actually
sir.
Introduced this. He just raised this in one of our episodes with Dr. Esguerra, the perfect storm. Sir Hermie?
Yes, perfect storm, and what I call it, the calamity before the storm.
Yeah.
It's not calm before the storm, but calamity before the storm.
That's nice.
Because we are in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then with all these typhoons that would necessitate the evacuation of people, that would necessitate the activation of business continuity plans or recovery plans, for example, you have the pandemic that you should always be at the back of your mind, that you should put at the back of your mind always, because when you respond, you have to think about the impact of COVID-19. For example, in the evacuation, are you still having a congregate evacuation or non-congregate evacuation? Because before the pandemic, we always have this congregate evacuation, and they have that in place. The schools, gymnasiums, and what have you. But because of COVID-19 pandemic, you need to look at and shift your focus on the non-congregate evacuation centers, and even use other venues, for example, hotels, schools, and make sure that people maintain and comply with government protocols on social distancing. Another issue is also the operation center that you will establish because of the disaster or because of the calamity. Is this going to be the normal operation center where people are seated beside each other? Or it would be an operation center where you maintain social distancing. And how are you going to set up the operation center? The next one is when you serve the food. Is this going to be a buffet style? Or is this going to be packed lunch and packed dinners that will be served to the people? So these are the sort of things that you need to bear in mind because of the calamities before the storm. We have the COVID-19, and then we have the typhoons coming in. So you need to I guess you need to reconsider whatever plans you have and take into consideration the current situation of the pandemic.
I think I would agree with Sir Hermie. Basically, looking at it, na parang there's really an evolution when it comes to disaster response nowadays, and even incident or in any crisis, because we under the new normal, we still have to take in consideration the precautions with having the COVID-19 issue just around us. Parang, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah. In my input, I would like to point out how difficult it will be for the businesses directly affected by these typhoons to move forward, in the sense that because of the pandemic, it has given a lot of impact. And then you have this typhoon where your infrastructure is damaged. We have the telcos, electricity. There are some areas still in Albay right now that are not where the electricity is not yet restored. So how can you do business in that kind of environment? Are you going to invest in a generator? Are you going to have multiple internet sources apart from your fiber network that you have? So those are the kinds of questions that business entrepreneurs in this typhoon-stricken areas are facing right now.
Yeah, that's why earlier I talk about preparing for the effects rather than the cause.
Yeah, that's
so you prepare for non-availability of your personnel, for example, because of the typhoon, the flooding that that comes with the typhoon. The destruction that it creates. So you need to prepare for that. And with all the disasters, with all the calamities that we had experienced in this country, we have a ton of experience, ton of learnings. The most important part is did we learn? That is the question that you
Sure.
need to ask. With all the calamities, with all the disasters that we had experienced in this country, sometimes you can't help but think, did we ever
Sure.
learn?
Sure.
Why is this happening?
Again.
Why is this
Again.
particular
Yeah,
place been
there's a
inundated with flood? You know,
yeah, there's a
Yeah.
pattern here. It
that's right.
happened
So,
before. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a precedent. But anyhow, so we due to time constraints, we have to move
Yeah, I know.
further.
Oh my gosh.
All right. So in our top 6, decrease in index crimes reported by the PNP, but security experts are stating that there's an increase in online-related crimes such as phishing, scams, and identity or data theft. All right.
that's
So-
right. I think because of the pandemic, the crime situation has actually gone down.
Right.
The crimes index has gone down. It's like watching Pacquiao fight.
Yeah.
Every time
Zero
Pacquiao
crime.
fights, the crime, there's no crime in Metro Manila. You know, it's
Yeah,
or
totally
in the
zero.
Philippines.
It's like
Yeah.
that. But because of the pandemic, when everyone is locked down and you know, not everyone are out in the streets, and there's not that much interaction between humans.
Yeah.
Obviously, the crime index has gone down. But then again, because we moved into the digital world
Right.
and transformed and do our shopping online,
Paying
online
bills
scam
online,
had also increased,
Exactly. Mhm.
and it will not diminish. And I think next year in 2021, it would still continue. It will persist.
Yeah.
And there
I
will be
think-
a number of major attacks.
True.
Just recently, I don't know whether you've read in the papers, FireEye, who is supposed to be the
Right.
top cybersecurity firm in the
Right.
in the US,
The
the
US.
go-to firm for major companies, the top Fortune 500 companies, was
Right.
hacked by a state-sponsored group of hackers.
Mhm.
And what really got them is that whilst what was stolen from them were red team tools, but the way they were attacked really
Yeah.
left with no, I guess, doubt that it
Yeah.
was state sponsored because
Yeah.
of the discipline, because of the focus, and because they used novel techniques.
Yeah.
What novel techniques they are, they don't want to say. But then again, that's just, and it will continue. Now, if FireEye, who is supposed to be the top cybersecurity firm, was hacked,
How much?
how much
What
more
more?
for just an ordinary company
Individual.
out there?
Yeah.
Business unit.
And I think there were 2 U.S. agencies that were hacked as well by the
Right.
same state-sponsored group of hackers. And because we have moved into the digital world now, but a lot of companies have digitally transformed. So that will be the major issue for next year.
Yeah.
Um,
I would agree. Like what Sir Hermie have mentioned. Currently, we're already on a paradigm shift, and basically, this particular shift is it's inevitable for all companies to move forward. Adjusting to the new norm. When they say new norm, it's not about just the pandemic, but also in relation to transitioning to digital space. And I think my takeaway during one of our episodes with Mara was the question, culturally, Filipino are like, we're very sociable. We like you. That's also the reason why we're one of the world's biggest social media users. And but in terms of security or digital security, data privacy or data protection, is the Philippines ready for it, or are we
Are we
prepared for that?
aware?
Or are we aware? So that's why there's I think there's a movement now wherein it's encouraging many local companies to revisit their digital security, their cyber security, or if they don't have one, then they have to come up with digital privacy, because I remember back then.
They have to be familiarized with this in the first place.
True. And I think for talking to, let's say, business process outsourcers, call centers, Kasi before, I remember when Typhoon Yolanda hit, and even Ondoy was hit, the trend was many companies or many clients have put in the qualification of business continuity when they do their service proposal. Now, what I'm
Mm.
thinking is because of this paradigm shift, many of your clientels, many of the companies, before they would render service of contractors or consultants, they would require a certain level of information security plan, cybersecurity plan, since most of the business processes will be, digitalized.
Okay. So that's it for top six. We move on to the closure of the Philippines' biggest media network, ABS-CBN, as top five. Hello.
Yeah, I think Miles, you should be able to
Miles
discuss
will be
that,
the
Miles.
best person to discuss about
Yes.
this one.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
right.
not
Yeah,
sure.
you know.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure if our audience is have heard my story, but I am one of those retrenched worker of
Mhm.
ABS-CBN. I used to work in the regional network, regional ABS-CBN regional based in Naga City. Verification process, or
Mhm.
it is a state, not just state, but more of propaganda. It is for many people are saying, oh, there's a new leaders in the Congress, in the lower house, so probably ABS-CBN will be back. um,
Mhm.
that I'm not sure. The process is still going to be if ABS-CBN will file another house bill franchise, applying for franchise. um, that is, I'm not sure for 2021.
Mhm.
That's something that we should look out for. But for me, as a retrenched worker, yeah, still going on
It's more
through some
personal.
process.
True.
So there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Sir Hermie?
yeah, it's really hard. I have some friends whose friends working in ABS. There was actually one. He wasn't. She wasn't an employee yet.
Mm-hmm.
She was supposed to report, and then she didn't get to report to to ABS because of the closure, and the ABS is going to lay off its employees.
Workers,
So
yeah.
that's really hard,
Yeah.
and especially for those who had left other companies to join ABS. And then with all these things that happen, it's like a nightmare.
Right.
You looking forward to to working in such a great company as ABS, and then only to find out that it's not going to happen.
True. Yeah.
It's really difficult for those people, and I hope they're going to come back on air. But I think one of the deputy speakers in the House said that for that to happen, that certain significant changes have to be made. One of which is the change in management, for example. And I think
they really want that.
it has already in that direction, because I think Gabi Lopez is no longer the head. I think has left. In fact, he's not the chairman anymore. I think.
He stepped back,
Yeah,
stride.
that's right. So
In our number 4, we have weakening terrorism landscape in the Philippines. I think this is very crucial in when we're talking about the Philippine security, because when you talk about terrorism 2019, it's very important to look back on what happened in 2019, because in 2019, well, of course 2017 during the Marawi city siege was monumental. But what happened in 2019 was, I think, was the impact of the 2017 issue, which is in 2019 we've seen a big paradigm shift in terms of the security landscape, wherein we saw a lot of suicide bombings. I think when we talk about suicide bombings in the Philippines, before, this is something very, how can I say it? It's unusual. Because the most precedent cases of suicide bombing goes back to the Jovementados of during the colonial
Spanish era.
Right. But after that, we don't experience suicide bombing.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not something that is very common. Although there are cases where in the Pakistani in Cotabato was also claimed as a suicide bomber, but not as blatant as what happened during 2019, wherein you have foreign jihadists encouraging locals to put on the IED vest and then detonate themselves. So, however, when you look at 2020, it changed again, because so many things happened in 2019, like the IAC's founder died, and then you also have monumental personalities like the IS Emir Sawadjan, who died this year, who is also one of the key leaders of the Abu Sayyaf group. Sir Hermie?
yes, you're right. Suicide bombing, whilst you said it's unusual, it still is unusual in the country. If you look at the perpetrators of those suicide bombings, they were actually not Filipinos. Meaning, I
they're
think
foreigners.
most of them, there were three bombings, I think, suicide bombings, and most of them, if not all of them, were foreigners, were Indonesians, actually. Or carried 2 passports, I think. But, I think our homegrown terrorists have not graduated yet to that stage.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, that's right.
They won't.
But having said that, it's not far-fetched as well.
It depends on the training.
That's right, because of what's happening overseas as well. And the Philippines, specifically in Mindanao, which is the one of the centers of training of the jihadists in the world. But then again, the activities are actually confined in Jolo and Basilan. Although Basilan has now gone quiet, in Jolo, compared to previous years, now I think I don't want to say it's controlled, but because of the massive military operations in Jolo, the Abu Sayyaf there have, has difficulty moving around actually. And that's why there is a reduction, or there's no major kidnapping incident because of that, because of this pressure that is being put by the military in Jolo. There are quite a number of battalions there. I think there are 3 brigades there operating in Jolo. Jolo is just a small island, but it's a very difficult terrain and very challenging environment. But the pressure that's being put by the military there have resulted in the Abu Sayyaf group having that limited capability of engaging in their usual activities.
Right. I think for just a quick drop lang, my what I always tell this to most of our clientele, in regard to 2021 outlook, when it comes to Philippine terrorism, what we are focusing, aside from the traditional, traditional trend, is we have to also watch out for women and children jihadists, because recently we are observing that there's actually really a proliferation. There's really a lot of training happening among women and children, because again, for women, for children, it's more of like an adventure for them. When you have like children militants, they're more adventurous, but at the same time, they're more vulnerable into brainwash.
Yes.
On the other hand, when you talk about gender-based violence, you have women jihadists who are stepping up, because there's a shift between
power shift.
The typecast of being just passive, more on the administrative work.
Or
they're being put on the front line, to be more combative, and that basically push them or fuel their motivations as well. All right.
All right. So I hope that's interesting for our audience. Did any of your top 3 already appeared in our list or not yet? But before we reveal our top 3, let us just take another quick break here in Simply Security.
Streamlining security easily.
Casting live from Manila, Philippines, we are Simply Security, helping you streamline security easily.
And we're back. We will reveal our top 3. Let's go with our top 3 spot in our rundown, the controversial anti-terrorism law. So it is the question that we should pose in here is why various business associations have jointly voiced out strong oppositions against this legislation. So Hermie.
Yeah, I think it's born out of particular provision in the anti-terrorism law that could potentially penalize companies dealing with terrorist groups, specifically the New People's Army. It's not a secret that some companies are actually dealing with them in terms of paying off. I call them extortion, not revolutionary tax, but extortion, basically. If you are a company operating in those areas where there are NPAs operating, then you could become victims of extortion by these groups. And if you are providing material support, because this could be construed as material support, provision of material support to a terrorist organization, then you could potentially be penalized under the ATL.
Right.
And that's why that's why there are quite a number of businesses who are, quite concerned about this particular provision or this particular law, because it could significantly impact them.
Yeah.
And to some of them will probably be they might not, without them actually knowing it, that they're already violating.
Right.
And, it's just one day that the government will knock on their doors and say, hey, you are supporting this particular group.
Yes.
And close you down. Those are the concerns that are, they're carried by these companies.
Yeah.
All right.
So for me personally, as a security professional, I appreciate and I understand the wisdom of the law.
Yes.
Because especially when you talk about, because the current law or the previous law doesn't include, the Human Security of 2007, I think. Doesn't include cyber terrorism or the digital
these
security
new
landscape.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something that is also kind of promising because it's an evolving stature, right? I think just like any innovation, I think it's a work in progress. I'm not saying it's a perfect law. Yeah, it's not a perfect law, but I also appreciate that there are also criticisms being thrown at it because of that criticism, we will be able to adjust and improve that particular stature.
There could be some revisions.
Exactly. I'm not totally against it. What I'm just saying is that it's a dynamic process. And I think both the private sector and the government should be open in evolution.
In our number 2, the insurgency landscape. I'm so sorry, we just have 10 minutes left, I guess. But the insurgency landscape in the Philippines. So for AFP, according to AFP, 201 new people army members were neutralized, 264 arrested, and 7,615 surrendered in 2020.
Yeah. This is actually a landmark. I think personally that the government is really doing good. I mean, government forces is really doing good in relation to their anti-insurgency campaign, and then partnered with the charisma of the president. I think that's a perfect combination. Because looking at the previous administration, the current president is very charismatic when it comes to the base mass of the NPAs. Because now you have the mass, more inclined with what the president is saying rather than what the leftists are saying. That's why it's more regulated or more controlled. Then at the same time, I think the government have launched several or very effective platforms and then policies like the EO70 or the whole nation approach, wherein it's more of a holistic approach in dealing with the communist problems on the grassroots level. And then you'll see a lot of LGUs declaring persona non grata. So it's really grassroots level approach rather than just solely force.
So I guess but the question still it will be, can the Duterte administration put an end before his term to this world's longest armed insurgency? That is it.
Sure. The objective is that to end the longest running insurgency in the world. That's why we have the National Task Force of Ending the Local Communist conflict, armed conflict, NTF LCAP. The whole of government approach. It's not only a group of cabinet secretaries, but it's actually down to the barangay level.
Right.
So it's actually the whole government machinery fighting this particular problem, and that's really what is needed, because for so long a time it was more focused on the military. Although I have to correct that. The military is there focusing on the armed group. That is really the objective of the military. As far as winning the hearts and minds of the people, that's the work of the civilian sector. That's what we have the NTF LCAP. So the two of them hand in hand together, the armed forces and the police fighting the armed group, and then the NTF LCAP will fight
on the propaganda
fronts.
Yeah.
All the others, all the other the areas. So that's why I think I'm optimistic that the government would be able to achieve that objective by 2022.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So before we review our number one spot, let me just read some of the comments coming from our participants. In transnational crime, it has been identified that money laundering is considered a predicate offense, and terrorism financing is the subsequent offenses. May I know the thoughts of Sir Hermie, where there is seemingly limited talk or maybe effort, hopefully I'm wrong, by the government on terrorism financing?
Yeah, I think we need to focus on that. In fact, that's one area actually that's, and I'm a believer of that as well. If we focus on the financing, then you're actually cutting the support of the terrorists, and that's really what needs to be done. And there's, if you look at the activities that are currently being undertaken, you don't hear about activities focusing on cutting off the finances of the terrorists, but that needs to be done, so that we can cut off the funding of these terrorists, and hopefully they will just die a natural death because they don't have any financial support.
Yeah.
So the government should focus on that. We have the anti-money laundering law. In fact, the ATL also has that has the provision of financing as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Last comment, coming from Miss Moira. It must not be forgotten also that one of the reasons of the anti-terrorism law enactment is to comply with financial action task force conditions. Otherwise, we would also end up in the FATF gray list. I think that's
which we had been before.
Yeah, true. That happened before. All right,
okay,
Mylce.
Here we go. Our number one spot, which many of us may have already expected, is the COVID-19 pandemic. How it affected all of us, our businesses, our lifestyle, our movements, our plans for 2020.
Yeah. Sir Hermie?
Yeah, the impact is significant.
Yes.
And a lot of companies were actually severely impacted. There were quite a number of companies that have closed down. You can just go to the malls and, it's like a ghost town. And it's really sad because, this Christmas time, and then you go to the malls, whereas before last year, you have all this, flurry of activities by people trying to buy last minute presents. But now if you go to the malls, you can count the number of people there. So this is really a significant event that has impacted everyone.
Yeah.
And this is not going to stop now. I mean, this will continue until next year, even if a vaccine is available.
I couldn't agree more. True.
Because the virus will still be with us. The virus will still be there, notwithstanding the vaccine. So, we will continue to have this kind of situation. But then again, hopefully by next year, we have learned from what had happened this year. So the learnings that we have this year, hopefully we are going to apply whatever changes, whatever adjustments we are going to make for next year as we face another set of challenges next year.
All right. Okay.
Thank you so much, Sir Hermie,
thank you very much,
for
Sir
your
Hermie.
wisdom. And thank you, everyone who participated. So that's it. We're going to post that, right, Eric, in Black Pearl's LinkedIn page. So please do not hesitate to contact us via our LinkedIn page or send us an email at information@blackpearl.com.ph.
All right. Thank you very much, Sir Hermie Colina, again for being with us tonight. We hope that you've enjoyed and learned something new tonight, and in this last episode for the year.
For
but we
2020.
Hope that for 2020. Yeah. But again, this is just our season 1. We're still planning to to push this through on our second season, and we still hope that you could join us next year. And we'd also like to give special thanks to our production team, RR and Allen, and of course to our managing director, Mr. Joseph Guetta, for making this program possible.
Again, this is Mylce.
And this is Eric.
This has been Simply Security.
helping you streamline security easily.
Thank
Happy
you, Sir
holidays,
Hermie.
guys. Thank
Happy
you,
Thanks,
Sir
Eric. Thanks,
Hermie.
Miles. Happy holidays.